tell us a little bit about, why are you doing it, and what's the big picture thought behind it?
Well, first, we have a vision at Vestas, which is called wind, oil, and gas. And that is because we believe wind is the only source of energy that in the future is going to be recognized on par with oil and gas. Today in the world, wind covers about 2% of electricity consumption. And in the country where we come from, in Denmark, it's more than 20%, and it's going to go even higher in the coming years. So therefore, there is no longer a technological barrier to get it to work. On the other hand, we can also see, because we are very much engaged in the political debate, that the politicians have great difficulties in moving the agenda forward in combating climate change. And every time we go to many of these meetings, we meet a lot of dedicated companies, and I think I just was one of the moderators of the G20 Business Summit in Seoul, and talking to these major corporations, it's very easy to agree what needs to be done, seen from business perspective, but very hard to do on the political side. Therefore, also at these gatherings, we met with a lot of B2C companies, saying, well, how can you help us? Because we can see in our polling that the consumers actually have a strong opinion about this. So we sort of came to the conclusion that instead of politicians who are representing countries that cannot afford it, we have to remember that there are a lot of consumers in those countries who say they cannot afford it, that definitely can afford it. Meaning that if you can reach to those who have the money, which seems to be the consumers instead of the politicians, who keep saying they don't have the money. Because the interesting thing is that those who actually have the money, like for instance in Asia, they are moving full speed ahead here. China is very aggressive on this agenda. Korea have just given $26 billion to a green growth initiative set up by President Lee. At the same time, we are debating in the biggest consuming energy countries in the world, we cannot afford it. While we all know that climate change is becoming such a major issue. So we said, so the real essence and the answer to your question is it possible to get the consumers involved to vote every single day on how a product is being made? I mean, we know that we are living in a minute-to-minute driven society whereby everybody's reading the poll. And if you want to change the energy in the world, this is about a revolution. And revolutions is not something you do on a minute-to-minute in a poll. This is something where you have to make fundamental changes. But it is very tough for the politicians. So I don't see this as an initiative of pushing against the politicians. I see this as a help, whereby hopefully we can demonstrate through the consumers/voters that actually they have a very strong opinion about moving this agenda forward. They've never had this choice before, and therefore we're so delighted that these very distinguished organizations and companies have said we'd like to help getting this movement going, and therefore it's not called Vestas Made, it's called WindMade, so we can get everybody involved in wind industry, because this is basically what we need in the world. That's why we've done it.